Hello, this is AnlineOffline. Today we'll summarize the Season 7 patch notes for COD Mobile 2024. First off, the MG42 will have worse initial bloom when exiting a slide. This is insignificant and doesn't tackle why the MG42 disrupts the flow of gameplay, because you can still jump shot and just camp. I don't play BR, so I can't judge its damage nerf there. Like with the Tundra before, this is a psyop to convince people to use it less without actually having to do anything about it. After my video on the BP50, it seems that the devs are interested in making the M13 a potential rival. That, or they plan to bring back the Mythic Blueprint in the future and need a consecutive buff this year to drive up sales. Assuming this applies to the whole arms, the M13 will now have a much easier time achieving its potential time to kill without solely relying on single headshots. The FFAR, on the other hand, is receiving a lesser buff, and its bicep damage will now match its chest. This isn't much except for flanking and catching people off guard in close range. The real question is, how does this stack with Task Force Barrel, given that buffing bicep does what it's supposed to do? The base bolt speed of the AS Val is finally getting buffed, and will surpass its current mid-range barrel counterpart. With said barrel, it will now match the base CX-9 going forward. It's also getting a flinch buff, which is fine. The AK-117 will now have above average strafing speed for an AR, instead of being below average. The Peacekeeper is getting a buff to its second range, but because no one uses the base version, this translates to 2 more meters of effective range with rapid fire, and a solid 5 more meters with Task Force. The LK-24 already has an automatic bloom spread that rivals burst weapons, so buffing its initial spread isn't much. What's more impressive is its new bullet impact, which is more substantial than what the KN and base ICR got, and technically has less drop-off than slower but harder hitting ARs, like the Man of War and AK-47. Upon first glance, increasing the long-range damage by 1 point isn't going to do much for the EM2, but it's just enough for a single headshot to give you a 4-shot potential. You can also 4-shot at long range with Task Force if you target the arms and chest. The FR556's impact will now be similar to the ICR and KN44. It will also have a slightly faster than average ADS time for an AR instead of being slightly slower. The Bizon's bloom will now be on par with ARs, but its initial spread remains lackluster. Large caliber will no longer reduce your range. It wasn't necessary to use before, but now it doesn't hurt to do so. The MAC-10 will deal 10% more damage to the chest, and it doesn't matter because it's usually covered by the arms. Black Ops 4's Hades will now have the best base flinch amongst LMGs as it now matches ARs. Its underbarrel crossbar will have a much lower penalty to your bloom and makes it more viable at mid to long range. Moving on to operator skills. The Death Machine is getting a buff to its arm multipliers, matching the head and chest, and will now have a much more likely chance to 2-shot. Black Ops 3's Gravity Spike is once again getting a buff to its recharge time. The Munition Box is also getting a faster recharge. The Misdirection Device, which is mobile's take on the Modern Warfare Dead Silence field upgrade, will have a lower cost of use. For streaks, the Shock RC is getting a very minor nerf to its score cost. It's still 5 kills to get, and still 4 if you use Hardline. And last but not least, the Fast Recovery Red Perk will heal slightly faster. This is fine and better than another buff to Vulture, which was slightly scaled back in an earlier Shadow balance. So, what are my thoughts on these balance changes? The MG42 was hardly nerfed, and the BP50 remains untouched, so that's unfortunate. Other than that, I'm looking forward to trying out the EM2 and Hades more often. The devs seem to be pushing hard for the M13, and it's likely to become a top tier again with these back-to-back buffs. The Bizon didn't need a buff, as it's already one of the most noob-friendly guns. But I guess I can use the large cal instead of the 84 round mag when maxing out strafe speed. But hey, that's just my opinion. I'll be working on the Outlaw next. My name is On, and I'm off.